I need to tell you something right now. Not after you feel more prepared. Not after the situation calms down.
Not when you have more resources or more experience or more of.
Whatever it is you think you are missing right now.
Because if you leave in the next 60 seconds,
You will go back into whatever you are facing, believing a lie
about yourself that is making it harder than it has to be.
and I need you to hear what I am about to.
Say from the teaching of Pastor Steven Furtick at Elevation Church.
Because it will change the way you see the thing you are not ready for. My child, here is the lie. I am not ready for this.
Here is the truth. Just because you were not prepared does not
Mean I have not already provided. Stay, because there is a difference between those two things, and that difference is going to reframe the entire season you are in. I know what it feels like, my child. I know the version of you that looks at what is in front of you and does the math, and the math does not work. The resources are not enough. The experience is not there. The confidence is somewhere you cannot find it right now. I know the version of you that was doing fine, not perfect, but fine, and then the thing you did not see coming arrived. It did not knock. It did not give you time to study. It did not ask if you were emotionally available for a crisis this week. It just came, and you are standing in front of it thinking, I am not ready for this. And the longer you stand there, the more the thought grows. I should have prepared better. I should have known this was coming. I should have built the thing earlier, saved more, dealt with that years ago. Not let it get this far. I am not ready. And everyone can see that I am not ready. And somehow I ended up here in this moment, in this storm, in this season without what I need to get through it. I noticed every moment you felt the gap between what you think is required of you and what you think you actually have. I noticed every time you said yes to something, knowing your yes was going to be tested by something you could not predict. I noticed every time you showed up to the thing that was bigger than you felt and did your best with what you had. I was there in the moments before the storm when you were still preparing for something you thought you had more time for. I was there when the news came. I was there when the call came. I was there when the day arrived that you were not ready for, and you had to walk into it anyway. I was there when the rain came down. I was there when the streams rose. I was there when the winds blew. I was there when it all happened at once. I was there in the empty room. I was there when you ran out of notes. I was there when the money ran out. I was there when the energy ran out. I was there every time. I noticed. My child, here is what I want to correct before anything else. You have been treating the fact that you feel unprepared as evidence that I have not equipped you, but those are not the same thing. Your feelings about your readiness are not an accurate report of my provision. And what Pastor Steven Furtick preached at Elevation Church from Matthew chapter 7, the house on the rock, is exactly what I want to bring into your life right now, because it changes everything about what the storm means. The rain came down. The streams rose, the winds blew, and they beat against both houses, the one on the rock and the one on the sand. Both houses had storms. Not just the house built poorly, not just the house that deserved a hard season. Both. And this is the thing I need you to sit with before I go further. I did not promise you a life without storms. I did not say that putting your trust in me would calm every wind and redirect every flood and hold every difficulty at a distance. What I said is that the house built on the rock will stand. Not because the storm was smaller, but because the foundation was stronger. And here's the first reframe I need you to receive. The storm does not prove that you are not ready. The storm reveals what you are built on, not what you are lacking, what you have. Not your weakness, your foundation. Not what came against you, what you are standing on. My beloved, I want to tell you something about a season that Pastor Steven Furtick described at Elevation Church that will help you understand why your feeling of unreadiness is not the evidence you think it is. He stood in front of his congregation and told them, I have never felt less ready than I did in that season.
He was talking about the pandemic, the season when Elevation Church went into empty rooms and cameras and online-only services and uncertainty. And he did not feel ready for any of it. He was not prepared for what that season required. He did not have a plan for preaching to. No one in a room that used to hold thousands. And yet, the testimonies that came out of that season, the people whose faith was built, whose families were held together, whose lives were redirected toward me in that most disorienting of years, those testimonies outnumbered anything the church had produced in a season of feeling fully ready and fully equipped and fully confident. The season that represented the greatest test for him resulted in the most testimonies. My child, do you understand what that means? It means that my ability to work through you is not dependent on your feeling of readiness. It means that when the storm came that nobody was ready for, I had already provided what was needed. Not because the people were prepared, because I am the provider. And the provision was in the relationship, not in the preparation. Stay with me. Because what I am about to say about warfare and weather is one of the most practically freeing things I have for you today, my beloved. Not everything that is hard is an attack. Not everything that is difficult is the enemy. Not every flat tire is a principality. Not every season of depletion is a spiritual warfare battle. Requires an extended prayer vigil and a full exorcism. Some things are just weather. The rain falls on the righteous and on the wicked. The sun rises on both. I did not promise that following me would exempt you from the ordinary hard things of living on a broken planet with a body that gets tired and a mind that has limits and a world that does not cooperate with your schedule or your preferences. There are times when the enemy is actively working against you. I am not denying that. There are seasons of spiritual opposition that require the kind of prayer and fasting and warfare that Scripture describes. But here is what I need you to hear: not everything is that. Sometimes the storm is just the storm. Sometimes the difficulty is just the difficulty of living. And when you treat every flat tire as a demonic attack, you give the enemy more power than he actually has. He does not have infinite ammunition. He does not have the resources to wage war against you on every front of your life simultaneously. Most of the time, he does not need to, because you are doing his work for him by misidentifying weather as warfare and exhausting yourself fighting against things that just need to be walked through. My child, sometimes you do not need a 3-hour spiritual battle to get relief. You need a walk. You need to put your face up toward the sun. You need to get outside of your own head for a little while and let the ordinary world remind you that most of what you are carrying is not the enemy coming against you. It is just life. And life can be hard without being an attack. And knowing the difference, knowing when to fight and when to simply walk through, is one of the most important forms of discernment I can give you. Because here is what happens when you confuse warfare and whether you try to fight against everything. And not everything is about a fight. Some things are just about a forecast. Some seasons are not trying to destroy you. They're just passing through. The storm came against both houses. It did not come to destroy the house on the rock. It came to reveal it. My child, do not leave yet. What I am about to show you about David and the 5 stones is going to show you something specific about your situation right now. There is a young man who went to deliver lunch to his brothers at the battle line. Not a soldier, a shepherd. Not experienced in combat, experienced in fields, in quiet, in the keeping of things that could not keep themselves. And he arrived at the front line and heard a giant taunting the armies of the living God, and something in him could not be still about it. His brothers told him to go back home. Saul told him he was not ready. You are only a young man. He has been a warrior from his youth. You are not able to go against him. And David said, not because he was arrogant, not because he had overestimated his own strength, but because he knew something Saul did not know. David said, I have been practicing. I was keeping my father's sheep. When a lion came, I went after it. When a bear came, I went after it. I struck them, and I killed them. And the Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. I have been practicing. My beloved, Do you see what David was saying? He was not saying he was ready for Goliath specifically.
He was saying, I have been faithful in the field.
I have been practicing in the place I was given, even when the place was invisible and unglamorous and did not feel like the place a future king should be spending his time. I was keeping sheep. And in the keeping of sheep, I killed a lion and a bear, and did not know at the time that I was building the muscle memory and the miracle memory that was going to carry me into the battle line with a giant. This is what I need you to understand about the thing you are facing right now. The preparation that built you for this moment was not the preparation you thought was relevant. It was not the course you took, or the training you completed, or the credential you earned, or the specific experience you were supposed to have but did not get yet. The preparation was the lions, the bears, the invisible faithfulness in the field that nobody was watching and nobody was evaluating and nobody was planning to reward. The years of doing the thing in the small place, the staying with what you were given when everything in you was waiting for something bigger. That was not a waste. That was practice. And the practice built you for exactly this moment, even though you did not know this moment was coming, even though you would not have designed this particular test for yourself. You have been practicing for this your whole life. You just did not know what you were practicing for. My beloved, I want to go deeper into this David story with you, because there is a detail in it that Pastor Steven Furtick highlighted at Elevation Church that I do not want you to miss. When David arrived at the battle line and said he would fight Goliath, Saul tried to put his armor on him, his own tunic, his own coat of armor, his own bronze helmet, and David put it on and tried walking around in it, and then he took it all off. He said, I cannot go in these. I am not used to them. My child, I need you to hear what David was doing. He was refusing to fight in someone else's readiness. He was refusing to wear armor that had been built for a different body in a different season with a different calling. Saul's armor was real armor. It was proven armor. It had been through battles and come back intact. By every external measure, it was exactly what David should have wanted to have when facing a giant. And David looked at it and said, this is not mine. I am not used to this. I cannot move in this. And he went out to face Goliath with what he actually had: 5 smooth stones, a sling, and years of practice in a field. My child, how many times have you tried to put on someone else's readiness and felt exactly what David felt? You are wearing the armor of someone else's timeline, someone else's preparation, someone else's version of what being ready looks like. And you keep trying to walk in it, and you keep finding that you cannot move naturally in something that was not built for you. The comparison is the wrong armor. The metrics that someone else used to determine their readiness are the wrong armor. The timeline that worked for the person you keep measuring yourself against is the wrong armor. And every time you put it on and try to walk in it and stumble, you conclude that you are not ready. But you are not stumbling because you are unprepared. You are stumbling because you are wearing armor that was never yours. Take it off. Take off the comparison. Take off the timeline that was built for someone else. Take off the version of readiness that requires you to be a different person at a different stage with a different background, doing things in a different sequence, and go find out what you actually have, what is in your hand, what you have been practicing in the field, what experience you have built in the invisible seasons that is not impressive by the world's standards, but is exactly what this particular giant requires. David had a rock and a sling, and he knew how to use them. Not because he trained with a combat unit, because he was faithful in the field. And the faithfulness in the field produced a skill with a sling that the armor of a king could not replicate. He had something Saul did not have, not more experience, a different kind of experience, the kind that was built for exactly this battle. And so do you. The preparation you have is not less than what is needed. It is differently shaped, and differently shaped preparation that is yours and practiced and real is more powerful than the best-looking armor that does not fit your body. 5 smooth stones. You are only going to use 1. The rest are wasteful extra, because what you have is more than enough. Not because you are impressive, because I am the provider. My child,
Here is the signature reframe from this message that Pastor Steven Furtick declared at Elevation Church, and that I want you to carry into the rest of you. Your week. Just because you were not prepared does not mean I have not already provided. Say that again with me. Not prepared does not mean not provided for. Because here is what that means in your specific situation. If I placed the crowd in front of you to feed, I will give you the bread to pass out in their hands. If I gave you the challenge to meet, I will give you the resource to meet it. You have resource. You have relationship. And because you have relationship with the source, because you have connection to the one who is above every storm and who knew this storm was coming before you did, and who prepared you for it in the fields and the lions and the bears of every season you lived before this one. You have everything you need for the season you are in. Not everything you want, everything you need. There is a difference, and the need is already met. This is not about feelings. You may not feel it. You may stand in front of what is ahead of you, and every feeling you have says, I am not enough for this. Those feelings are weather. They are not the forecast of my intention toward you. I do not measure my provision by your feelings of preparedness. I measure it by my own faithfulness. And I have never left a person I called without providing what they needed to do what I called them to do. David looked underprepared. He looked too small. He looked too young. He had no armor that fit, and no sword that was his own, and no military experience, and no formal training in giant slaying. He had 5 smooth stones and a sling and years of faithfulness in a field. And that was enough. You have a rock. The house was built before the storm came. The foundation is already in you. The wind can blow. The rain can come. The streams can rise. All 3 can come at once, and the house will stand. Not because of anything visible, not because of your confidence or your credentials or your sense of readiness, because of the rock it is built on. And that rock does not shift when the storm intensifies. That rock does not dissolve when the water rises. That rock was there before the storm came and will be there when the storm passes. And the storm does not come to destroy what is built on that rock. It comes to reveal it. And here is what I also need you to do. Hear about the distinction between confidently confused and hopelessly lost. They are not the same. Confidently confused means I did not expect this. I do not know exactly how this resolves. I cannot see the end of this from where I am standing, and I am not going to pretend I can. But, and this is the part that changes everything, just because I was not prepared for this does not mean I have not already been provided for in this. I am confused about the path. I am confident in the provider. I do not know the answer. I know the source of the answer, and the source has never run out. Confidently confused is David saying, I have never fought a giant before. I do not know exactly how this works. I did not plan to be here today. I came to drop off lunch. And yet something in me knows that the one who rescued me from the lion and the bear will rescue me from this. I do not have all the information. I have the relationship, and the relationship is with the source. My child, if you are in a season of confidently confused, if you find yourself navigating something you did not see coming with resources that do not seem sufficient, and experience that does not seem adequate, and a certainty that does not seem available, I want you to stop trying to resolve the confusion before you move. Stop waiting for clarity before you step forward. Stop treating the confusion as disqualifying. David did not have clarity about how 5 smooth stones were going to bring down a trained warrior in full armor. He had relationship, and he stepped forward, and the rest is in the text. Move, my beloved, not because you are ready, because the provider is ready, and the rock is under you, and you are more ready than you recognize. My child, do not leave yet. The most important word of this message is still ahead. I want to talk to you about the difference between teaching and training, because this is the distinction that changes what the storm means for your life. Teaching is when you hear information about how to handle hard things. Training is when the hard thing arrives and you have to do it. Teaching is when you pray, Lord, make me more patient. Training is when the person who requires the most patience from you shows up for the next season of your life. Teaching is when you journal about the goodness of God. Training is when you have to find the goodness in the season. That does not feel good. Teaching gives you notes about storms. Training puts you in the boat and sends you through one. My beloved, I want to apply the teaching versus training distinction to something very specific that I know you have been carrying. The feeling that you should be further along by now. That by this point in your life, this age, this stage, this many years into the faith, you should have less anxiety about the hard things, more peace in the uncertainty, more confidence in the storms, more stability in the shaking, and the fact that you still feel the wind and still feel the water rising and still feel the fear when the sudden comes that must mean the training has not taken. That must mean the foundation is not as strong as it should be by now. I want to correct this directly. Feeling the storm is not evidence that the foundation is weak. The house on the rock still felt the wind. The walls still shook. The rain still came through. The experience of the storm was not canceled by the foundation. The storm was full strength for the house on the rock and the house on the sand. What the foundation changed was not the experience of the storm. It was the outcome. The house on the rock felt every bit of what the house on the sand felt. And it stood. Not because the walls did not shake, because the rock did not move. My child, stop measuring the strength of your foundation by the absence of fear in the storm. Start measuring it by whether you are still standing after the storm has done what storms do. Are you still here? Are you still in this? Have you walked through things that should have ended your faith and found that your faith, though shaken, did not fall? Then the foundation is working. The rock is holding. The training is taking. Not because you feel unaffected, because you are still standing. You are not supposed to stop feeling the wind. You are supposed to stand in it. There is a difference, and you are standing. And here is what this means for you. The storms you have been through were not failed training sessions. They were not evidence that the training is not working. They were the training. Every hard season you survived built something in you that notes never could. Every storm that came and you did not fall is a record. It is evidence. It is testimony. And the testimony of a house that stood through a storm is more powerful than the testimony of a house that was never tested. Because when the next storm comes, and it will come, because rain falls on the righteous and on the wicked, you will not just have information about surviving. You will have muscle memory. You will have miracle memory. You will have the deep body knowing of someone who has been through this before and did not fall. Not because they were strong enough on their own, because the rock held. My child, I want to speak to something very specific that you have been carrying. The feeling that because you did not see this coming, it means you should have. The feeling that if you were more spiritually mature or more practically prepared or more attentive to the signs, you would have anticipated this and positioned yourself better. The guilt of the unprepared. The shame of being caught off guard by something that other people seem to navigate with more ease and grace than you are managing right now. I want to address that directly. The storms in the text came without warning. The people in the story did not have a weather app. They could not track the system moving in. They could not make decisions in advance based on a 5-day forecast. The climate was dry and warm, and then suddenly without announcement. Without preparation time, the rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house. Suddenly. That is the word that describes the weather patterns of that region and era. Suddenly. And the suddenly was not a moral failure. It was not a spiritual deficiency. It was not evidence that the people in those houses were less spiritually attuned or less faithful than the people in other houses. It was just suddenly. The storm came suddenly. And sometimes, my child, the difficulty in your life came suddenly too. And the fact that it came suddenly is not evidence that you were not paying attention. It is evidence that you are a human being living on a planet where sudden things happen to people who love me and people who do not love me and people who prepared and people who did not prepare and people who prayed and people who have never prayed a word in their life. The sun rises on all of them. The rain falls on all of them. The sudden comes for all of them.
And here is what I need you to stop doing. Stop treating the suddenness of this difficulty as a verdict on your faithfulness. Stop treating the fact that you did not see it coming as proof that you were not building on the right foundation. You could have been building on the rock. The storm still would have come suddenly. Because the storm is not a report card. The storm is weather, and weather does not grade you. It just comes. What matters is not whether you saw it coming. What matters is what you are standing on when it arrives. And what you are standing on is not your preparation. It is not your prediction. It is not your ability to anticipate and strategize and position yourself ahead of the difficulty. What you are standing on is the rock, the word that you put into practice in the ordinary days before, the extraordinary difficulty, the faithfulness in the field that I have been using to build a foundation in you that you cannot see from the outside, but that is holding you right now in this moment, even as you read these words. You did not see this coming, but I did, and I had already provided, my beloved. I want to go back to the pandemic illustration from Steven Furtick at Elevation Church for a moment, because there is one more thing in it I need you to have. He said that the time that represented his greatest test resulted in the most testimonies. The most testimonies. Not a few good stories. Not a handful of people who made it through okay. The most. In a season where he felt the least prepared and the least equipped and the least confident, the fruit was the greatest. And I want you to understand why that is. It is because in a season where the preparation was inadequate, the provision was visible. When you are highly prepared and highly confident and highly equipped for what you are doing, it is easy for you and for the people watching to attribute the outcome to your preparation, to your skill, to your competence, to your ability. But when the preparation is clearly insufficient for the task, when anyone watching can see that there is not enough of you for what is required of you, and the thing still gets done, and the people are still reached, and the house still stands, and the testimony still comes, then what is visible is not you. What is visible is the rock. What is visible is the provision that came from the relationship. What is visible is the loaf that was in the boat that nobody saw until it was needed. My child, the seasons where you feel the least ready may be the seasons that produce the most testimony, not in spite of your unreadiness, because of it. Because in your unreadiness, the provision is clear, the rock is visible, the relationship is obvious, and the people watching and the you watching from. The inside cannot attribute what happens to your preparation. You have to attribute it to me. And that is the most powerful testimony there is. Not, I was fully equipped and I handled it well, but I was not ready, and it was done anyway. And the only explanation is the rock. Let me tell you one more story. Pastor Steven Furtick told at Elevation Church. And this one is about a young man named Graham who was called up to the stage without any warning. Furtick just looked at him, a teenage boy sitting in the congregation, and said, "Come up here." I did not tell him to come. I did not warn him. I did not give him preparation time. I just called him up and handed him a microphone and gave him a 30-second assignment and sat back and watched. And Graham did it. He preached 30 seconds of scripture summary with the clarity and the confidence and the conviction of someone who had been studying this material, not because he knew he was going to, needed on a Sunday morning in front of a full congregation, but because he was studying it for his own Bible study that week. He was not prepared for the stage. He was prepared by the practice. And when the calling came sudden and unannounced and without preparation time, the practice was already in him. The word was already there. The foundation was already laid. And he stood up and he gave what he had, and it was enough. It was more than enough. It was better than anything Furtick had planned. My child, that is what I am saying to you. The calling you are in right now, the one that feels too big and too sudden and too much, did not arrive in an empty room. It arrived in a room that has been furnished by every moment of faithfulness that came before it. Every conversation where you practiced the word. Every prayer where you practiced the trust. Every difficult season you survived where you practiced the standing. Every lion you killed in the field when nobody was watching. That room is furnished. The word is already there. The practice is already in you. And when the calling came sudden, unannounced, without the preparation time you would have asked for, you were more ready than you recognized. And here is one more thing about David and the Solomon connection that I need you to have before I close this message. King David, at the end of his life, when he could not build the temple himself because he was a man of war, gathered everything he could and gave it to his son Solomon. Gold for the gold work, silver for the silver work, bronze for the bronze, iron for the iron, wood for the wood, onyx, turquoise, marble, all of it. In large quantities, he gave his son everything he needed to build what God had called him to build. And then David said something that I want you to receive as, what I am saying to you in this very moment, my son, is young and inexperienced. The task is great, but with all my resources I have provided for him, my beloved. You are young and inexperienced relative to what is in front of you. The task is great. The storm is real. The gap between what you feel you have and what you think you need is visible. And it is uncomfortable, and it is not something I am asking you to pretend does not exist. But I have provided with all my resources, which are unlimited, which do not run out, which are not depleted by the difficulty of your season or the size of your giant or the sudden arrival of the storm. I have provided for you everything you need for the season you are in, not the season you want to be in, the season you are in. And the provision fits the season. The loaf that is in the boat fits exactly what is needed for the crowd that is in front of you. And when you find it, when you look past the panic of not seeing it immediately and begin to trust that I have placed it there, you will discover that you have everything you need. You have resource, not necessarily the resource you asked for, the resource you were given. You have relationship with the one who is the source of all resource, with the one who knew this storm was coming before. It had a name and had already provided in advance, with the one who gave David the lions and the bears before. There was a Goliath, with the one who gave Graham the knowledge of the scripture before. There was a platform, with the one who built the foundation before the storm arrived. You have a rock, and the rock holds. You are more ready than you recognize. You are more ready than you feel. You are more ready than Saul said you are. You are more ready than the situation suggests. You are more ready than the math says. Because the math does not account for the rock, and neither does Saul, and neither does the voice inside you that is doing the inventory of what you do not have, and concluding that you are unqualified for the thing in front of you. That voice has never met the rock, and the rock has never lost a battle. My beloved, I want to speak one more time to the person who has been carrying the specific weight of feeling like their inadequacy is the reason the thing they are responsible for is not going as well as it should. The parent who feels like a better version of themselves would be doing this parenting season with more patience and more wisdom and more peace. The leader who feels like a more qualified person would be navigating this season of the organization with more clarity and more confidence, fewer mistakes. The person in the relationship who feels like a healthier version of themselves would be showing up with more emotional availability and more grace and less reactivity. The one sitting with a challenge that someone else seems to handle effortlessly and thinking they are ready for this. I am not. I want to say something to you very directly. You are not comparing your actual experience to someone else's actual experience. You are comparing your private interior to someone else's public exterior. You are seeing what they show, the confidence, the competence, the ease, and concluding that they have something you do not have. But you do not have access to what is happening on the inside of what looks effortless from the outside. You do not know what it costs them. You do not know what they are carrying underneath the composure. You do not know what their private unreadiness feels like because you are only seeing the prepared performance. And here is what Furtick told his congregation at Elevation Church. He did not feel ready for the pandemic season. He was in front of thousands of people watching online and in the building looking like someone who was navigating it with pastoral authority and spiritual groundedness. And on the inside, he felt less prepared than he had felt. In 20 years of ministry, you cannot see the foundation from the outside. You can only see the house. And the house looks the same whether it is built on rock or sand. Until the storm comes, then the difference is visible. But by then, you are not comparing houses. You are surviving one. Stop comparing your readiness to someone else's appearance of readiness. Start looking at your foundation, because the foundation is what matters. And your foundation is not built from what you brought to this moment. It is built from the practice of every moment that brought you to this one. And if you have been putting the word into practice, if you have been showing up even when the showing up felt small and invisible and unrewarded, then you have a foundation, and the foundation holds. Even when the comparison says you are not enough, even when the inadequacy feels overwhelming, even when the person next to you seems to be doing this better than you because they might have better walls, but you have a rock. And when the storm comes, the storm that comes for everyone, righteous and unrighteous, prepared and unprepared, the walls are irrelevant. The only thing that matters is what the house is built on. You have a rock. You are more ready than you recognize. You are more ready than the comparison says. You are more ready than the math suggests. You are more ready than you feel. Because feeling ready was never the foundation. I am the foundation, and I do not fail. Do it when you feel ready. Do it when you do not feel ready. Do it with the experience. Do it without the experience. Do it with the resources you asked for. Do it with the resources you were given. Do it with the armor that fits. Do it without the armor that does not fit. Take off what is not yours. Pick up what is. 5 smooth stones and a sling and years of faithfulness in the field. That is enough. You have a rock. You have resource. You have relationship, and you are more ready than you recognize. And before I bring you to the prayer, I want to say one final thing about what it means to build your house on the rock, because I think there is a misunderstanding about what that actually requires. That I want to clear up before you walk away from this message. Building on the rock does not mean having perfect theology. It does not mean having every question about my nature and my ways fully resolved. It does not mean being the most consistent person in your small group, or the most disciplined in your prayer life, or the most knowledgeable of Scripture in your circle. Building on the rock is simply this: putting my words into practice. That is the definition Jesus gave. Everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, not masters them, not fully understands them, not defends them without error, puts them into practice. Practice means you are still learning. Practice means you get better over time, but you are not finished yet. Practice means some days the practice goes well, and some days it is harder and all of. The days you show up and do it, and over time the muscle memory and the miracle memory build, and the foundation goes deeper. And one day, one ordinary Tuesday when you were not expecting a storm, the rain came down, and the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house. And the house stood, not because you were perfect, not because the practice was flawless, not because you never had a day where the practice felt empty, but because the practice was real. The foundation was there. The rock was under you. My child, the storms in your life are not punishments. They are not evidence of failure. They are not signs that you went wrong somewhere, or chose badly, or believed inadequately. They are weather. They are the ordinary, extraordinary difficulty of being alive on a broken and beautiful planet where the rain falls on everyone. And they are training, not punishment, not exposure, training. Because the Lord reveals His truth in the seasons of ease, and the storm reveals your trust in the seasons of difficulty. And trust, real trust, the kind that holds when the wind is loud and the water is high and the confusion is thick. That kind of trust can only be built by being in the storm and choosing the rock. You have been choosing the rock in the hard seasons, in the sudden seasons, in the seasons where you did not feel ready, but you kept building, in the fields with the lions, in the apartment with the headphones, in the empty room with the camera. In every moment you put the word into practice, even when the practice cost you and the reward was invisible and the season was long and you were not sure it was building anything. You have been building on the rock, and the house is standing, and the storm that is coming, or the storm you are in right now, is not going to change that. Because the foundation was laid before the storm. And the foundation is not your feelings. It is the rock. And the rock does not move. You are more ready than you recognize. Not because you have it all together. Because the rock does. My child, you do not have to feel ready. You do not have to have the storm figured out before you walk into it. You do not have to have everything you asked for before you start. You just have to stand on the rock. And today, in all of the uncertainty and the unreadiness and the feeling that this is bigger than you stood. You are still here. You did not walk away. That is the rock holding. Come as you are, unprepared, underfunded, uncertain, still here. That is enough for me to work with, my child. I want to close this message with something very simple, very practical. One thing you can do today that will begin to change how you experience the next time unreadiness arrives. I want you to make a list, not of what you do not have, of what you do, not of the resources you wish you had for this season, of the resource you have been given, not of the experience you lack, of the lions and the bears you have already survived. Get a piece of paper or open your phone and write down every storm you have already been through. Every difficulty that arrived suddenly that you did not feel ready for, that you survived anyway. Every season with a gap between what was required and what you had was visible and real, and yet, you made it through. Every lion in the field that you thought was bigger than you, that you struck and killed and rescued the sheep from. Every moment where the provision showed up in a form you did not expect in a time you did not ask for, in a way you could not have predicted. Write it down and then read what you wrote, and let the record of what I have already done in your life be the ground on which you stand when the newest storm says you are not ready for this, because the record will say I was not ready for any of it, and the house stood anyway, because the rock held, because the provider provided, because the relationship was with the source. And when the next giant steps forward, and it will step forward, because giants always show up to meet the battle line of a life that is building toward something real. You will be able to say what David said. I have been practicing. I have been faithful in the field. I have been in the place of my purpose in the invisible. Seasons. I killed a lion. I killed a bear. And the Lord who rescued me then will rescue me now. I may not have the right armor. I may not look the part, but I have a rock and a sling and years of practice in a field and a relationship with the one who is above every giant and every storm and every sudden thing that I did not see coming. And I am more ready than I recognize. And so are you. You are more ready than you feel. You are more ready than the season suggests. You are more ready than the comparison says. You are more ready than Saul thinks. You are more ready than the math shows. You are more ready than your inadequacy claims, because the rock is under you and the rock holds. My beloved, one last word before the prayer. I want to say something about the congregation that Furtick described when he stood in front of that empty room during the pandemic. He did not feel ready. He told us that. But something else was also true. The people who got the church through that season, the ones who stayed on the stools behind him, the ones who kept showing up, the ones who did their small, faithful thing in an empty room. They were not ready either. Nobody was ready for that season. Nobody had a preparation plan for what that year was going to require. And yet, the testimonies came, and the families held together, and the faith was built, and the provision arrived in forms nobody had asked for, nobody had anticipated. The loaves were in the boat the whole time, hidden from human sight, visible to the one who placed them there. My child, you are not in your storm alone. The people around you who look more ready than you are navigating their own unreadiness. The leaders who appear more equipped are carrying their own gaps. Nobody is actually prepared for the things that come suddenly. Nobody has a foundation they can see from the inside. We all just have the rock, and we all just put the word into practice in the ordinary days and trust that the practice is building something underground that will hold when the flood rises. You are not the only one. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are not the one person for whom I did not provide adequately. You are in the company of every person I have ever called, to something every prophet who said, "Not me." Every shepherd who was told, "You are not ready." Every leader who felt the gap between the assignment and the equipment, and what they all discovered, and what you will discover is this. The calling proves my confidence. I would not have called you if I was not confident you could do it. I would not have allowed this storm if the foundation was not already in place to hold you. I would not have sent the giant if I had not already placed the rock in your hand. I want you to say this to yourself right now, out loud. I am more ready than I recognize, not because of what I have, because of who is providing, because the calling proves the confidence of the one who called me. Because just because I was not prepared does not mean I was not provided for, because the rock is under me, and the rock holds, and the house was built before the storm came, and the storm does not destroy what is built on the rock. It reveals it. Say it, my child. I am more ready than I recognize. Let us pray. God, I thought I needed to feel ready before I could be used by you. I thought the gap between what is required of me and what I have was evidence that you had not provided. But today I see it differently. Just because I was not prepared does not mean you have not already provided. You gave David the lions and the bears long before Goliath arrived. You gave the house its foundation before the storm came. And you have been building in me in every hard season, in every storm I survived, in every moment of faithfulness in the field that nobody saw what I need for. This, I have resource, I have relationship, and I have a rock. And the rock is not my confidence, it is yours. Today, I am going to stand on it. Not because I feel ready, because you built the house before the storm came. And the house stands because of what it is built on. Not what I feel, not what I have. You. And I want to say one more thing before we close, about what it means to have a rock when you are in the middle of the storm. And you cannot feel the rock because everything is moving. When the rain is loud, when the water is rising, and the wind is beating against the walls, and all you can feel is the shaking, and all you can hear is the howling, and all you can see is the flooding. How do you stand on a rock you cannot feel in that moment? How do you trust a foundation when the walls are shaking and the instability is real, and the fear is not abstract but visceral and present and loud? You say it out loud, like David did at the battle line. You say the thing you know, even when you do not feel the thing you know. You say the Lord is my shepherd. You say I am more ready than I recognize. You say just because I was not prepared does not mean I was not provided for. You say I have resource. I have relationship. I have a rock. You say it when you cannot feel it, because the saying of it is itself an act of standing on the foundation. The confession is the practice. The declaration is the doing of the word. And as you do it, as you say what you know in the middle of what you feel, the practice builds the muscle memory. And the muscle memory becomes the miracle memory. And the next time the storm comes, the declaration comes more quickly. The feet find the rock faster. The house remembers that it has been through this before and stood. And the standing becomes the testimony. And the testimony becomes the foundation for the next person who is watching from the outside, wondering how you are still here after everything the storm did to your house. Tell them the house did not stand because of anything they could see. Tell them it was the rock it was built on. Tell them you are more ready than you recognized. Tell them just because you were not prepared did not mean you were not provided for. Tell them, because your testimony is the loaf in the boat for someone else who is still looking and not seeing it yet. You are more ready than you recognize, and the rock holds, my child. One last word about what happens after the storm passes, because storms always pass. Not on your timeline, not on the schedule you would have chosen, but they pass. And when this one passes, when the rain stops and the streams recede and the wind settles and the ordinary world comes back into view, I want you to remember what you learned about your foundation in the middle of it. Because the testimony of a house that stood is only useful if it is told. The training only compounds if it is remembered. The miracle memory only builds if you return to it in the next storm, instead of starting from scratch as if you have never survived anything before. You have survived. You are
surviving. You will survive this.
Not because the storm is not real, because the rock is realer.
And you are more ready than you recognize. Now go. Stand in it. The rock is under you. In Jesus' name, amen. Come back tomorrow, my child. I will be here.